Hello and welcome to today's video, and oh boy do we have a lot to talk about in today's episode of the Racing Debrief. First, I want to touch on last week not having an episode of the Racing Debrief. I had to work early the next day and had to kind of pick and choose what was the video to make, so we went with the race playlist, just due to the time that the race ended, time recording, all that. Unfortunately, the Racing Debrief got canceled last week. But we're here, and we picked a good week to return, because we had two races to really talk about. I mean, there is Xfinity in there, but it was kind of just a few laps. But we had the Austrian Grand Prix, and we had the Chicago street races. So, let's do F1 first. So, basically throughout the weekend, of course, there was a sprint. So you had your weird jumbled up weekend, of course. I already made a short touching on Checo's performance and qualifying and how that was disappointing to continue to get track limits. But looking back at it, the whole weekend was just a mess with track limits. Not so much in the sprint. The sprint we've seen a little bit of rain, or at least the track being wet, so we've seen some intermediates. And the sprint was definitely spiced up by the fact of drivers either staying out on intermediate tires or going to slick tires. There was definitely a mix in between of what we've seen in that. So that definitely spiced up the sprint. It was cool to kind of have that, a little bit in there to add to the sprints, because the sprints don't really add much to F1. I was definitely for the sprints in the beginning, but the more they've kind of existed, they kind of just seem like a pointless exercise of wasting time. Because it doesn't really add much. I mean, I watched the sprint and I'm like, cool, I guess. Again, it's kind of just a weird thing that exists. I mean, even the teams don't know what they're calling it. So, there's that. It's definitely a weird mix of what is this. So, God, what the hell, dude? Something's been bugging in my eye. God damn. So, the sprint's definitely something to sort of exist. They're there for whatever purpose. So they're very strange. Going to the actual race, it was more, Red Bull dominance, Max dominating. I'm not going to say I was against it or anything. Let me just show off my hat here. I'm not going to say I was against it. I definitely liked it. We did see a different driver lead that wasn't Max for the first time since Miami, lap 49. So Max led 249 consecutive laps, which was wild. Charles Leclerc came in and got the lead for a few laps when Max was pitting. But outside of that, the main focus, the main talking point of this race was the track limits penalties. They were everywhere. It seemed like almost every single lap, the top of the screen was lighting up with penalty, black and white flag for somebody doing something. And it was just consistent throughout the whole weekend, or the whole race, I should say. Consistent throughout it. And after the race is over, Aston Martin protested and said, "You guys missed some." And oh boy, did they miss some. So, Ocon got a 30-second penalty. Sainz, Hamilton each got 10-second penalties. Logan Sargent got a penalty. Alex Albon got penalties. So there's a few other drivers I'm in there that I'm missing, but it kind of shuffled up the order. Top three drivers hit the same, though. So that was good to not touch the podium. I mean, if they deserved penalties, they would have got it. But fortunately, we didn't have any of that. Cause it's always annoying when they're switching up podiums after the celebration. All that. I think the main thing is that there has to be a balance of how late we're deciding penalties, really figuring out some of those penalties. Like, I don't think that we need to be jumbling up the top 10 that drastically. I feel like we have to get to a point where we can figure out penalties in the race. Something like a track limits penalty where you can't do anything to overcome it. Those seem a bit harsh to put out at that point. I don't think this is the right approach to it. I do think, though, that there are some issues with the Red Bull Ring. that need to sort of be discussed, I guess, in that sense. First of all, in those corners, track limits are very, very hard to police going into turn 10, especially. Turn 1 a little bit, but turn 10, very, very difficult to police. And it's something that you see it at that track all the time. Drivers going wide. And I know, I do it in the video game because I know I can get away with it in the game. Obviously, F1, they're going to call it out more. But in the game, I'd definitely push it wide in that spot. You know you can. So I can only imagine the drivers wanting to do it in real life. So I get that and I see it. I think there needs to be, you can't just push the track limit further because they're just going to push that limit further. So I don't really know what the answer is, but I think something needs to be looked at for next season at that track. The other thing that I feel like has been discussed every year, nothing happens with, is the pit entry line area. I feel like, because we've seen it, I believe Charles Leclerc got the penalty in the sprint qualifying, or sprint shootout, whatever they called it. He got the penalty in that for blocking, but the line into the pits was where their car was coming. So I know whatever they talked about and discussed, everybody agreed, oh, this is great. But I just don't think that we should be having that. The slowing down to the pits shouldn't be the racing line. I feel like that's weird. I feel like there can be something adjusted with it some way. I don't know what, though, but I think that that's something that needs to be looked at for next season as well. So that was F1. Next F1 race is next week, the British Grand Prix. So looking forward to that. Red Bull trying to tie the record for most consecutive wins by a team, which is 11 by McLaren. So, now let's talk about some NASCAR racing. Talk about Chicago street course. And oh boy, is there a lot to go into. First of all, it was the first ever street race for NASCAR. Obviously, street racing is something that's raced in most of the other series of racing that take place. I mean, F1 has multiple street races: Monaco, Singapore, Azerbaijan, Saudi Arabia, Australia a little bit, Miami, not really, Las Vegas this year coming up. Like, there's a lot of tracks that F1 goes to that are street races, and you see it with IndyCar. They had Detroit earlier, a few weeks ago. You have Long Beach. There's Nashville. Then there's one in Florida, St. Petersburg. I think that's part of the streets. I know it's on like a runway, but I think part of it's on a street. But NASCAR never done a street race. Chicago got announced last year. They were obviously trying out on iRacing in 2020 in the Pro Invitational during COVID. There was a lot of racing that each week. They were doing that on Fox to kind of supplement there not being racing on Sundays. So we've seen that in that series. It's been an iRacing for a few years. They tested it out. And, it was definitely leaning towards this could be a reality, a street race in Chicago. Now, I know a lot of people have been against it. I didn't really have an opinion on it. I kind of wanted to be open-minded going into it. I thought it'd be cool. I have said I don't think they would do it again. Some of the backlash, I think that may change a little bit after today's race. But, yeah, I think that it's one of those things that when they announced it, it seemed wild, it seemed crazy. But seeing it in person, seeing it actually take place, I guess I should say. It wasn't live, whatever I'm saying. Seeing it take place on TV, seeing it as a reality, I guess what I'm saying, and not just in iRacing, was just special. I think it's the same thing as like North Wilkesboro a few weeks ago, right? North Wilkesboro was something that, obviously if you're an older fan, you're old enough, old enough in 1996 to remember it, or have seen it in person or live on TV. It was North Wilkesboro. But if you're younger, the only time you ever seen it was iRacing or replays. When you seen it on TV, it was just something special. And that was special for the All-Star race. And seeing Chicago is one of those things that we've seen on iRacing. It was cool. But seeing it actually on TV, this is a real thing taking place. It was just wild. I turned on qualifying yesterday. I had a little bit of time before I had to go to work. That I was able to watch it, and I was just like, this is crazy. Cup cars, Chicago. So we had the Xfinity race, which had 26 laps. Cole Custer pretty much dominated. I think he led all the laps. It ended up raining. It rained on NASCAR's parade. And there was a lot of rain. So they canceled it last night, called it off. Or Saturday night, I should say. This would go on Monday. Saturday night, canceled it. Called it off. Let's do it Sunday at 11. It was downpouring. There was flash flood warnings. I was checking Twitter. It was crazy. So they ended up calling it off, saying Cole Custer's the winner. Of course, they had drastic circumstances where they could say this is the winner, because there was only 2 laps. I mean, what are you going to do, have them parade laps and just call it, or just say it's over? So to say it's over. I didn't know that was a rule. It is in the rule book, though, that you can, if a drastic situation takes place, they can say, we got to stop. And I think that a lot of it was they could push it to Monday. Monday was the last possible day. But is it worth pushing to Monday to get 2 laps to halfway? And they would have to pay Chicago more money. Not really worth it to do that for a race that's the second series. That's almost halfway through. Cole Custer wins. I'm fine with it. So, we go to the Cup race. Starts in the rain. Starts a little later. So it's supposed to start at 6:30 Eastern time. I think it started it's supposed to start at 5:30 Eastern time. It started at about 6:30 Eastern time. So, a lot of cars going in the barrier. Turn 6 was wild. Noah Gragson hit the wall 4 times there. You had Denny Hamlin sliding off the track. Tyler Reddick hit the wall in that spot. Chase Elliott, Kyle Busch, they all hit that similar spot. Denny Hamlin had a different spot. I don't know why I said Denny Hamlin. But I was just saying, in general, drivers that went off. The biggest pile-up was going, I think it was out of 10 or 11, one of the last 2 turns. You had William Byron went into the barrier. Kevin Harvick was sliding, tried to avoid him. I think he would have saved it. Would have hit the wall, but Corey LaJoie just tagged him just a little bit. Sent him spinning around. We had the whole track blocked up. So, it was overall wild. It was getting dark. Of course, the laps were slower in the rain. But again, the first half of it dominated by Christopher Bell and Tyler Reddick. They were gone. It was those 2. You did have Shane Van Gisbergen. Is that how I'm saying his name right? I'm going to go with that. Hopefully I'm saying it correctly. I know on the broadcast they were struggling. They were saying SVG every time. But he was also in there. Of course, racing for the Project 91 team. Or Trackhouse Project 91. Their 3rd entry. It was cool to see him up there competing well. I mean, he had a good qualifying lap. So, he was definitely a threat throughout the race. So, NASCAR decides later on, we're going to say the race ends at lap 75 instead of 100. Cut off 25 laps. It's getting dark. Sun's going down. They don't have lights. So, it benefited a lot of the drivers in the back of the field. You had... Well, that's how you got that pile-up, because a lot of those guys were from the back of the field that got to the front. So Christopher Bell got in it, Kyle Larson, they got messed up. Both of those were doing good. Then Tyler Reddick crashes into the barrier, and you get more cautions. Justin Haley, though, was leading. Of course, the colleague car you'd expect to be leading at a road course. And, Justin Haley could get a spot in the playoffs. You got Austin Dillon right behind. He's not going to do anything dumb, is he? Oh, he hit the wall. So of course, you got Chase Elliott back there, who NBC specifically, I don't want to typically talk about the broadcast themselves. I feel overall, Fox has dropped off, obviously. I'm not on the train of Fox is the worst thing ever. I do think Fox has fallen off from where they used to be, obviously. I think that's clear. So I think NBC sort of taking the spot as the better broadcast. A lot of their graphics are better. The announcers are better. Pretty much what Fox has going forward is Mike Joy. Let's put it that way. So the one criticism, though, that's a really big glaring one for me for NBC is their obsession with Chase Elliott. It's insane. I feel like Fox doesn't really hype up Chase Elliott specifically. NBC loves this man. It is crazy how much they are hyping up Chase Elliott. They were begging for him to win. But Shane Van Gisbergen comes through and passes Chase Elliott. Passes Justin Haley. Bubba Wallace puts Ricky Stenhouse on the wall. The barrier. I don't know what happened. Bubba blocked up, did something. Overtime. But at that point, it was over. Shane Van Gisbergen pulls through, gets the win. First driver since 1963 to win on debut in the Cup Series. Oh boy, that was a moment to watch. That was so excited to see him make those passes. Get to the front. I mean, we got to see another Red Bull driver win. That's cool. Of course, Red Bull winning the whole day. Brilliant to see. But yeah, it was man, it was so cool to see something special. The first ever NASCAR street race. The first, winner on debut in 60 years. A driver who's never raced in NASCAR. Of course, the V8 supercars in Australia are close to the next gen Cup car. So it wasn't as big of a gap. Goddamn. Should have probably drank some water before this video. It wasn't as big of a gap as we've seen maybe in previous generations of cars. I mean, the last car would have been a little bit more of a learning curve. I think this one here is a lot closer to the V8 supercars in the fact of, again, how you shift it, how the steering is in it. Again, they obviously have similar weight. Again, downforce is different, and the fact of what side of the car you're driving on is different. But, I mean, outside of that, the cars are as close as they've ever been. And to see him get that win, it was it was a special moment. It was definitely cool to see. Yeah, I don't even know how to put into words what that was like to witness. I mean, I've never seen anything like it. So, just a historic moment. Chicago, I'm sold on it. I'm sold on NASCAR doing street races. Give me more. Give me 2 or 3. Like, I'm for road courses. I've been saying it, for a while. I've been saying it years on the channel and our videos. Give me more road courses. Give me more road courses. I'm for it. Give me, give me 10 road courses in a season. I'm happy with that. Road courses are brilliant. Give me 10. We're at 6. Give me 2 more street races. Give me Portland. Give me Road America. We're good. Give me all of them. Give me all the road courses. Give me all the street races. Chicago was brilliant. I loved it. I hope they come back next year. I think this race sold a bunch of people in the city, hopefully in the government there. Got some new fans. I think it's a success. I'd like to see the full distance, maybe not have the rain, affect some of that experience for the people there. Because the experience of going to a NASCAR race is awesome. So, if you get to go as a new fan, hopefully next year those people can either get to go again, or people that didn't get to go to it can say, oh, I want to go to it from Chicago. I loved it. Give me more. I'll take it. Next week, though, we have Atlanta. See what happens. It'll be a completely different type of racing. We go from a street course to a super speedway type track. Atlanta's a weird one. So, what a day of racing. That was brilliant. I hope you guys enjoyed, because I had to let me know down below what you thought of the races from today. And we'll see you guys in the next one.